gut check time plus a victory week, you know what that equals? Greatness, folks, because you know why? This is the 53rd episode of the Football Junkies podcast, okay? We have a lot to talk about in a little bit of time because you know why? Thursday night football is tomorrow, but you know this episode is going to come out before then, but you know what? We have to talk about a few games, okay? Browns and Steelers, Eagles and Panthers, Rams and Bills, Seahawks and Cardinals, and most importantly, gut check time, okay? I know that you have been waiting for this episode, and I am here to deliver the fix that you need, okay? But guess what? I am your host with the most, okay? I am your GM who currently is not on a team right now, but don't you worry about it, okay? I am your chief Bagrodamus, chief head of the table when it comes to anything and everything related to football, whether that be bag alerts, whether it be the draft, whether it be opinions about the draft, whether it be why the Steelers are going to the Super Bowl this year. Just know it's all going to be from here, the Football Junkies podcast, okay? But guess what? I'm all these things and more, but most importantly, I am your host, Kale. You already know what I'm getting ready to say, but guess what? If you got something that you have to do today, guess what? It will get done because why? This is the Football Junkies podcast. It's probably going to be an hour long, and so buckle up because guess what? It's going to be a great episode. So guess what? On three, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's just get into the meat and potato thing that is going on in the league right now. So before we get into the gut check time, we got to talk about a few games that caught my eye, okay? So let's just dive into everything, okay? So Russell Wilson, 15 for 26, 158 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 6.1 yards per attempt, and a 57.7 completion percentage, okay? Najee Harris, 16 attempts for 53 rushing yards, 3.3 rushing yards per carry, and 1 rush of 10 plus yards or more. Pat Freiermuth, 3 targets for 3 receptions, 48 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 16 receiving yards per reception. Jameis Winston, 24 for 41, 212 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 5.2 yards per attempt, and a 58.5 completion percentage. Nick Chubb, 11 attempts for 48 rushing yards, 4.4 rushing yards per carry, and 1 rush of 10 plus yards or more. Jerry Jeudy, 6 targets for 5 receptions, 64 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 12.8 receiving yards per reception. Now, this is what I will say about this game. This was a highly anticipated game that definitely drew a lot of attention by a lot of people, simply because of how things, went down with the first matchup between these two teams. All right, it started to look a little bit shaky at first because after the Browns scored their first touchdown, they started to build some momentum and they started to drive up the field. And then things were starting to get to a point where they were, setting themselves up to either score a touchdown or get a field goal. The Steelers, being the Steelers, of course, were starting out really slow. We needed somebody to make a play. Who was that person that made a play? Keanu Benton. Keanu Benton gets a very much needed interception, and in doing so, puts the offense in a great position to score, and then the rest is history. And with us getting Alex Highsmith back, that was very much needed because he was doing his thing. TJ Watt still had somewhat of a quiet game. He was still doing his thing as well. Cam Hayward continues to defy the odds and continues to silence the naysayers every single season. So all in all, a really great win. And this puts the team in a really good position because as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, they could clinch their playoff spot on Sunday. Now, it can be clinched in 2 ways. It can be clinched with either Miami or Indianapolis losing, or if they win against the Eagles. Now, do I think they will win against the Eagles? I don't know. Simply because George Pickens is going to be out, and, the offense was really struggling on Sunday without George Pickens, and you see how much of a role George Pickens plays on this offense. Now, granted, yes, we did get Mike Williams and whatnot, but he can't do what George Pickens can do, right? And so I just want to see exactly how things are going to go. Now, I can be, a fan and I can say, oh, yeah, we're going to beat the Eagles. We have not won against the Eagles in a long time. So only time will tell. I still have my spirits up high on Sunday, but only time will tell. But, for the Browns, this basically just puts the nail in the coffin for your season. And I'm not saying this, to be funny or anything, but I'm saying this because, the aspirations of possibly making, somewhat of a playoff run or trying to get into the wild card, it's over. Now, on to another game that definitely caught my attention as well, and that is the Eagles and the Panthers game. Now, before we get into any of the hot takes and any of the things that, have been leaked out within the last few days, let's just get into the stats first, okay? So, Jalen Hurts, 14 for 21, 108 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.1 yards per attempt, and a 66.7 completion percentage. Saquon Barkley, 20 attempts for 124 rushing yards, 6.2 rushing yards per carry, and 5 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. A.J. Brown, 4 targets for 4 receptions, 43 receiving yards, 10.8 receiving yards per reception. Bryce Young, 19 for 34, 191 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 5.6 yards per attempt, and a 55.9 completion percentage. Chuba Hubbard, 26 attempts for 92 rushing yards, 3.5 rushing yards per carry, and 1 touchdown and 1 rush of 10-plus yards or more. Adam Thielen, 11 targets for 9 receptions, 102 receiving yards, 11.3 receiving yards per reception. Now, this is what I will say about this game. Before this game even happened, most people would have thought, okay, this is going to be a complete slaughter. This is going to be a game where the Eagles are basically going to run up the numbers. But no, the Panthers have actually been playing fairly well within the last few weeks of the season. And mind you, they're doing this without a lot of their star players on both sides of the ball. They put up a fight against the Eagles. If Xavier Legette catches that touchdown, we are having a whole different conversation about this game. But because he didn't, of course, the Eagles won, and the rest is history. But the bigger conversation that's being talked about now, though, is the potential friction in the locker room between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. There was a point in the game where, it was another 3 and out, and, A.J. Brown was getting off the field, and he threw his helmet on the ground, and you can see that he's voicing his frustrations with Devontae Smith and company, and you can definitely see that there's frustrations and whatnot, and, that's fine, right? But then when you have your teammates, like Brandon Graham, who go publicly and say, oh, yeah, there's a little bit of friction between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. I don't know about that. Better yet, you know what? Hold on. Give me 3 seconds. I'm gonna find this quote. Stay tuned. And we're back here, folks. And I found that quote. Okay, so this comes from Brandon Graham. Okay, we're going to talk about this quote as well as the apology that he put out as well. So here we go. And I quote, I don't know the whole story, but I know that 1 is trying and 11 could be better with how he responds to things. They was friends before this, but things have changed, and I understand that because life happens. End I quote. Now, this is what I will say. Brandon Graham, this was probably the wrong time to say something like this, because now you have somewhat created this giant media storm within Philly, which we all know has been very toxic and for I don't know even how long, but they are super toxic when it comes to their sports teams. Now you have created this storyline that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are basically beefing and all those different types of things. And then you try to, spin things and try to apologize and try to tamp out the fire when it's like, bro, you can't do that. So this is what he says, right? And I quote, first, I want to start off by apologizing to my guys. I made the assumption. I didn't know all the details and I still don't. And I was just like, dang, I just really saw everything that y'all saw with the video and I was reacting to that, and I should have used a little bit more logic on it. As always, we got to stand up through the good and the bad. Right now, I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a great thing because chaos definitely creates diamonds. Pressure makes diamonds. I feel like this is about to be something where we're going to bounce back from really good. This is what he's saying. This is not what I'm saying. This is the direct quote that he's saying. This is not me missing any words or anything. I just want to put that out there. We all make mistakes. All of us just want to win for the city, and we all made some mistakes in this one. I understand that you're trying to apologize and you're trying to, rewrite your wrongs and everything, but What's done is done at this point. Now everybody is going to start speculating and going to start using their quote unquote sources, imaginary sources, and try to put out leaks and all these different types of things. But the fact of the matter is, the team is winning. We are on the cusp of potentially making it to the Super Bowl once again. And the only way that we can do this is if we stay locked in. And if you're not locked in, guess what's going to happen? It's going to create friction from the outside, and then what's happening on the outside is going to try to link into the inside. And you don't want that, especially at this point of the season. Right now, the only teams that you really have to worry about in your division is the Lions, the Vikings, and the Packers. That's it. Everybody else, it's up in the air, and you wouldn't even have to face them because why? You're in a great position playoff wise. So again, time to put out, quotes and assumptions of this magnitude. And granted, I understand, when you look at the games and you see frustration and whatnot, you instantly want to assume things, but this was the wrong time to do that. This is what I will say, though, for the Eagles. You do have some tough matchups. Still have to go up against the Steelers. Despite, you guys have been winning and beating us for the last 10 years, you still have to go up against us. We're not no slouches. So maybe this is the game where they try to, silence the haters, the naysayers, and all those people that are assuming things. Maybe this is the game, but I'm telling you, if they lose bad against the Steelers, this thing is going to blow up even more. But I'm not even going to go there. I'm just going to leave it where it be. All right. Now, on to another game. The Rams against the Bills. Now, let's just get into the stats before I say what I need to say. All right. So, Josh Allen, 22 for 37, 342 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 9.2 yards per attempt, and a 59.5 completion percentage. Josh Allen, that's crazy, right? He's a running back. 10 attempts for 82 rushing yards, 8.2 rushing yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, and 3 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Listen, when I was pulling up the stats, I was a little bit skeptical about putting Josh Allen on it twice. But I was like, you know what? We might as well want to do it, all right? Khalil Shakir, 8 targets for 5 receptions, 106 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 21.2 receiving yards per reception. Matthew Stafford, 23 for 30, 320 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 10.7 yards per attempt, and a 76.7 completion percentage. Kyron Williams, 29 attempts for 87 rushing yards, 3 rushing yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, and 2 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Puka Nacua, 14 targets for 12 receptions, 162 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 13.5 receiving yards per reception. This is what I will say. This game definitely could have been winnable for the Bills. But because of their own mistakes, they allowed the Rams to win. There was a stretch where it was a bunch of pass interference, holding, pass interference, pass interference, pass interference. I'm like, bro, how many times are you guys going to keep on calling pass interference on this defense? This defense is starting to get a little bit leaky here, folks. I'm just saying. Anytime you have a team like the Bills who have a really good defense and they are continuing to repeat the same penalty over and over and over and over again, that catches up to you. And guess what happened? The Rams caught up and they won the game. They couldn't stop Puka, nor could they stop Cooper Kupp. As of right now, the Rams are definitely a dark horse within the NFC playoffs because they are a team, believe it or not, that could give, teams a run for their money. Now, granted, when you look on paper, you're probably thinking, well, they don't got this or they don't got that or they don't got that. But guess what? They play fundamentally sound. And they've been doing it for the second half of this season. And it's paying off phenomenally. And right now, they're in the driver's seat where they can determine if they're really going to make a deep playoff run. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to say they're going to win the Super Bowl. But what I will say is this. They are a team that you cannot sleep on. That offense is running on all cylinders. That defense, especially that defensive line, Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk. Once again, the Rams are hitting on their draft picks, but that's a deeper conversation for another day that we will have this offseason, though. On to the Cardinals and Seahawks game, all right? Geno Smith, 24 for 30, 233 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 7.8 yards per attempt, and an 80% completion percentage. Wow. Zach Charbonnet, 22 attempts for 134 rushing yards, 6.1 rushing yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, and 4 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 5 targets for 5 receptions, 82 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, 16.4 receiving yards per reception. Kyler Murray, 25 for 38, 259 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 6.8 yards per attempt, and a 65.8 completion percentage. James Conner, 18 attempts for 90 rushing yards, 5 rushing yards per carry, and 4 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Trey McBride, 14 targets for 7 receptions, 70 receiving yards, and 10 receiving yards per reception. This was a pretty good game, but then it started to get out of hand once the Seahawks really started to impose their will on this Cardinals offense. Kyler Murray seemed a little bit startled once things started to not go in his direction. And then ultimately, the Seahawks just ran with, the momentum that they had and they sealed the win. This does affect the Cardinals because, again, this is a divisional game. And we have hit that point where if your divisional record is not in a good spot, it's going to affect you when it comes to playoff seeding and whatnot. So all in all, this is something that, the team has to sort of be concerned about with the next few games, coming up. You want to try to win as many games as you have a safety net for yourself just in case things go a little bit awry. Because right now your division is topsy-turvy. You're competitive with the Rams and the Seahawks. And so right now, of those three, who is one going to win the division and who's going to get, that seed from that division? Because right now you can make a strong case that the Rams are just as dangerous as the Cardinals, and you can make a case right now that the Seahawks are probably the biggest problem within that division. It's a team that is young, hungry, and has a head coach who has done phenomenal things with this defense. May I remind you, folks, this is the same head coach who was the defensive coordinator for the for the Ravens last year with that historic defense. I'm telling you, this Seahawks team, this division as a whole, outside of the 49ers, they're going to be problems moving forward. All three of these teams are young. All three of these teams have young coaches. All three of these teams are going to be ultra competitive as time progresses. But it's gut check time, and you already know what that means, okay? This one is going to be a little bit different. Why? Because this is going to be a gut check for every single team in the division, okay? 32 gut checks, okay? So let's begin with the greatest division in football, the AFC North, okay? So for the Browns, finish strong, okay? You have 4 games left. You need to put out some good tape, especially if you are a player who is supposed to be a free agent after this season. This Browns team needs to go through somewhat of a makeover, right? The Deshaun Watson project has not worked. So far, you have seen more production with 2 backup quarterbacks than you have the quarterback that you traded for, and you gave him a fully guaranteed contract. I'm not saying that you have to get rid of Deshaun Watson, but you need to assess the quarterback position as well as other positions on both sides of the ball. Because as of right now, there is no reason why this team should have not been, fighting, to get into the wild card. Because again, Jameis Winston, despite all of his ups and downs, he's had flashes of, good Jameis Winston, and he's had bad Jameis Winston. But all in all, you know what you're getting with him. You see that he's been more productive than what Deshaun Watson has been prior to him getting injured. If I am the Browns, if I'm Kevin Stefanski, you're going to have to start Jameis Winston next year. You're going to have to, actually, you know what? Skirt. Let me bring that back. You're going to have to re-sign Jameis Winston, and you're going to have to make him the starter until Deshaun Watson can prove that he is, the guy. Because as of right now, as I just said, Joe Flacco literally carried this team to the playoffs and basically was playing with house money, and Jameis Winston did it. I'm sorry. Decisions have to be made, all right? Now, for the Bengals, I really don't know because they are a team that I really didn't expect for them to get to this point. When you look at the stats that Joe Burrow has been putting up, you can make a strong case that if they were winning, if they had a winning record, most likely he would be competing for MVP. But because of their defense is so lackluster and their defense has failed them more than helped them, this is the situation that they're in. Now, granted, you won against Dallas, cool, but you have Tennessee, Cleveland, Denver, and then Pittsburgh. You're going to lose at least 2 of those games. Maybe even 3, if we're being honest here. Do I think they could possibly, sneak into the playoffs? Maybe, but I think that window is so small. I'm talking about the smallest of the small. I'm talking about not even a little bit of air could get through that. There's just no point. You might as well want to try to finish the season strong, assess what you have and what you don't have, what you need, how you're going to, get those needs, and then just go from there. Try to retool for next year. For the Ravens, lock in, okay? You're coming off your bye. You're going up against a team in the Giants who they're not going anywhere, so that should be a game where you can just steamroll them and whatnot. But outside of the Giants, you have Pittsburgh, you have Houston, and you have Cleveland. You are going to probably need to win out in order for you to possibly try to win the division. Because even when you look at Pittsburgh's schedule, not trying to, put the cart before the horse, they have Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Cincinnati, right? Even though they are in a good spot to win the division, and although Pittsburgh has a 2-game lead over you, if they start losing some games, it can start to make things a little bit dicey. You have to lock in because as of right now, you don't want to get to a point where you're gonna be going up against one of those hot teams like the Broncos or the Chargers or the Bills. You don't want that. You want to try to go up against a team that you sort of have somewhat of a balanced type of matchup, not something where it's like, oh, this is going to be a hard matchup. I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know how we're going to get out of this. For the Steelers, maintain your divisional lead. And the reason why I say that is because, as I just said, you do have a 2-game lead over the Ravens. But this is the hardest stretch that you are going to have this entire season that everybody was talking about. You have to go up against Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City, and then Cincinnati. But you have to go up against Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City within a matter of a few days. Not to mention George Pickens is out for this game. So I don't know. I really don't know. But I will tell you this. Mike Tomlin is going to have that team ready. I don't care what anyone says. Mike Tomlin is going to have this team ready to compete. Now, the Steelers are in a situation where they could still win and still secure their playoff spot either by winning their game on Sunday or Miami losing or the Colts losing. So either way, they're going to make it to the playoffs, right? It's just a matter of, do they want to continue to try to compete for a higher seed? Because if the Bills lose against the Lions on Sunday, I think they do have a chance of possibly getting the 2nd seed. So, hey man, a lot is riding on this. Now, for the AFC South, fight. You got to fight to win the division. Because as of right now, you're coming off your bye. Okay, cool. Your first opponent coming off the bye is Denver. Denver is red hot right now. Denver is ready. They are ready to be competitive into the wild card / playoffs. So you're going to have to, you're going to have to deal with that. And then after that, you're going to have to go up against Tennessee. I don't expect, Tennessee to really put up a fight. I think they're just, in a position where they're preparing themselves for the draft. New York, steamroll. Jaguars, steamroll. Well, actually, no. I take that back. I take that back. The divisional. I forgot all about it. You still have to worry about the Jaguars. Despite them not having Trevor Lawrence for the rest of the season, you still have to worry about them because why? They are your division rivals. So you see them twice a season. For the Jaguars, hit the reset button. Yep, hit the reset button. I said what I said, and I'm going to stand on it. Hit the reset button. Better yet, hit it 2, 3. Hit it about 3 times, okay? Because, you're not going anywhere. There is so much that is going to happen on this offseason that it's ridiculous. Because most likely Doug Peterson is going to get fired. You're going to have to clean house with that entire coaching staff. You're going to have to bring in a new head coach. It also doesn't help that there's not as many offensive coaches available as there is defensive coaches. As of right now, the most popular offensive coach will be Ben Johnson. Not to mention all the other head coaches. You have Bill Belichick, who's still in the mix, despite all the rumors and speculations that he's going to take the UNC job. Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores, and maybe one or two other people that I'm not thinking of right now. So a lot's about to happen. Not to mention, you are going to have to go up against Tennessee, New York, Las Vegas. No. I think they already went up against Tennessee. Forget about that. You're going to have to go up against New York, the Raiders, Tennessee, and then Indy. I don't know really what to say about the Jaguars, but, this is this has been horrible for the Jaguars. If you would have told me that, that they would be in the position that they're in, I would have called you a liar. They have yet to try to pick themselves up since, they had that great defense with Jalen Ramsey and Telvin Smith and Miles Jack and Calais Campbell and company. But it's another story for another day. Now for the Titans, hit the reset button. Because why? You have not really done anything. You're not supposed to be doing anything because you're still going through a rebuild, a hard rebuild, if I may add in that as well. So, your expectation low. Now you're going to have to go up against Cincinnati. That's going to be somewhat of a tough matchup. Indianapolis, division. Jacksonville, division. And then Houston, division. The rest of your opponents are division outside of Cincinnati. I don't think you're going to win any of those games. But, again, divisional games are very close. Always have been, always will be. I've seen crazier things. Shoot, if you would have told me that the Steelers would have lost to the Browns in their first matchup, I would have called you a liar. But it happens. For the Texans, maintain divisional control. Because as of right now, the only team that you really have to worry about within your division is the Colts. And right now, if the Colts went out, that can put you in a sticky situation. But if you win against Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore, and Tennessee, hey, you might be able to put yourself in a good spot. And on top of that, you're coming off a bye week. So you're fresh. So you're prepared and whatnot. And on top of that, you're in a position where if you beat Miami, if you beat the Chiefs, you can mess things up for them as well. Just saying. Just putting that out there. For the AFC East, for the Jets, 3 words for you. Reset, refresh, refocus. Okay? Because right now, this team is not going anywhere. Okay? If I'm a player in this team, I am calling my agent. I'm figuring out, hey, what would my value be if I was to hit free agency? What teams you think will probably be interested in me? Let's start building up a transition plan once the season is over with. If I'm on a contract, what do I need to do so I can request a trade so I can get out of here? All those different types of things, okay? Because this is a mess. This is a complete mess. And you are going to need somebody to come in and to clean this up on both sides of the ball, okay? You have to figure out what you're going to do with Aaron Rodgers. You have to figure out what you're going to do with Devontae Adams. There's just so much to figure out at this point. This isn't going to be an overnight thing. This is going to be a, multi-year process thing. And so you have to be able to sell that to the owner as well, despite his departure, because he's going to be the ambassador for the UK, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. No one cares about that. But I do think what does need to be talked about, though, is Devontae Adams, words that that came out a few days ago on the Up and Adams show. And I quote, I mean, it'll be a sad thing for sure, but hopefully that's not the case. That's why we got to make the most of the ones we have here. We had a decent showing last game, and I do say decent because it's not up to our standard of greatness, but it was definitely a step in the right direction, and I quote. And that's basically him talking about, the potential of him, being released and, not playing with Aaron Rodgers anymore. But this is something important that I think needs to be talked about, though. Since joining the Jets, Devontae Adams has had 40 receptions for 453 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns in 7 games, right? He has failed to surpass 100 receiving yards in 6 of the 7 games that he's been with the Jets. This has been a complete dumpster fire for this season, okay? I understand that you wanted to play with your guy. I understand, you had the most success with your guy, but at the end of the day, guess what? It has been nothing but a waste of time. You have wasted another season trying to think that you are going to win with this guy. And granted, I understand that, you have chemistry with him and you probably didn't want to try to develop chemistry with other players. But guess what? When you look at all the other teams that were interested in you, guess what? All three of those other teams are going to go to the playoffs. You're not going to go to the playoffs. And not to mention, it also doesn't help that you also have the highest cap hit on the team at $38.3 million. So it'll be different if your stats was phenomenal, then they can try to talk themselves into, taking on that cap. But because you really haven't been playing the best this season, they're going to have to let you go. And if I'm Devontae Adams, if I'm in his corner, I'm probably telling you, hey, bro, listen, you done did everything else, okay? You done got the money. You done got all the other success. It's time for you to end this thing with a championship. And if I'm Devontae Adams, I want to be released. I want to try to go for any of these other playoff caliber teams at this point because you have more years behind you than you do ahead of you. And you want to end things on the right foot, which is what? Holding up a Lombardi trophy. For the other team that we are talking about, okay? Patriots, end the season strong. Nobody expected for you to win 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games, all right? We all know that you're going through a hard rebuild, so the expectations are fairly low. But you're going to have some tough matchups, okay? Some really tough matchups. You have to go up against Arizona, Buffalo, the Chargers, and then Buffalo again. Those are some really good defenses, and they're going to punch you in the mouth. So you have to be prepared for that. Not to mention, you just released KJ Osborne, who's probably one of your most productive receivers, even though, yes, that it was a mutual parting, but still, you have that and whatnot. So just try to win something. At least try to make it competitive. If you try to make it competitive, I don't think no one's really going to stay. You just get steamrolled by the rest of these teams. I don't know. Now, I'm not saying that, they're going to get rid of Gerard Mayo or anything, but again, the expectations coming into this season was fairly low. I think this was probably their ceiling with 3 games. Now you have to position yourselves for next year when it comes to the draft and free agency and all those different types of things. Now, when we look at the Dolphins, though, you still have a chance to make it into the playoffs. However, the road to get into the playoffs is going to be hard, okay? Because you're going to have to go up against Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland, and the Jets. You're going to have to go up against some teams that are still trying to fight to, either make it into the playoffs or just try to end the season strong. Case in point, the Browns. No disrespect to the Browns. And so, right now you are 5 and no. They're 6 and 7. They are 6 and 7 because they won against the Jets on Sunday. You're 6 and 7, right? So right now, if you go on a little bit of a run, you beat Houston, you beat San Francisco. That's 8 and 7. Okay, cool. You beat Cleveland 9 and 7. Then you beat the Jets 10 and 7. You can still get into the wild card. Now, am I saying that they're going to make it far? Probably not. Probably not. Simply because of the time that that Tua was away from the team because they were trying to figure out exactly the severity of his concussions and whatnot. And that's not necessarily a penalty to the team and whatnot, but that's just where the team is right now. If I'm the Dolphins, try to see if you can get to the wild card. If you can't get into the wild card, well then at least you have some good tape that you can review and assess and make your decisions about how you want this team to to move forward, going into next year. Because as of right now, this team, in my mind, has failed the expectations, right? You paid Tua all that money, cool. You traded for Tyreek Hill. You paid Jalen Waddle. You got a left tackle. You did what you did with the defense and whatnot. And so far, it really has not paid fairly well. You haven't made it to an AFC championship, let alone you made it to the Super Bowl. And right now, it's not looking good. And I would not be surprised if that head coach is sort of on the hot seat right now. But hey, that's another story for the offseason, okay? Now, for the Bills, keep adding pressure on the Chiefs for the number 1 seed. Now, granted, you had an ugly game against the Rams on Sunday, and so now you have to try to bounce back from that, okay? Because as of right now, Pittsburgh could jump over you and get the second seed if you lose to the Bills. And that's probably going to be one of their hardest matchups this entire season. So you're going to have to be buttoned up when it comes to the play calling and whatnot. And then after Detroit, you have New England, the Jets, and then New England again. Those are 3 games that you should be able to steamroll and to win. But again, those are divisional games, so anything can happen. Moving on to the AFC West, keep adding pressure onto the Chiefs. Because as of right now, the Chargers could continue to be a nuisance to the Chiefs. Even though, yes, they do have the number 1 seed, you can still try to mess things up, for them, right? Because as of right now, you have Tampa Bay, Denver, New England, and then the Raiders. 2 of your divisional rivals fairly soon, okay? Tampa Bay's defense, even though, yes, they are banged up a little bit, they can still give you problems. New England, no problem. Vegas, no problem. So, again, you're in a really good spot. You really are. So, you want to try to continue to build off of this momentum because you're going to need it going into the playoffs. You really are. Now, for the Broncos, keep fighting. Okay, yes, you're in the mix to make it into the playoffs. Great, but at the same time, guess what? You want to try to, get as high as you can when it comes to the seeding. You want to. Because as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Chargers are still the 5th seed. And the Broncos right now are still the 7th seed. So, hey, if you want to get a little bit higher, you know what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to win your, the most important games. You are. When we look at it, you have the Chargers, you have Cincinnati, and then you end things with Kansas City. So, most likely that game against Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes and company will probably be rested. Who knows? But, for the Raiders, Thanos snap. Yes, I said it. Thanos snap. Get all that Infinity Stones. Better yet, use all your Super Bowl rings that you won, in the 80s and whatnot. Put them all into an Infinity Gauntlet and then snap your fingers because guess what? This season is over for you, okay? It is kaput. It is done. It is finito. It is over. Game over, okay? Even when you look at their schedule, Atlanta, Jacksonville, New Orleans, and the Chargers, I do not believe they are not going to win any of those games because I think they are, 100% focused on trying to get Shedeur Sanders. And so they realize, hey, if we want to be able to try to get that, that number 1 pick and keep the number 1 overall pick, guess what we have to do? Lose. And that's exactly what they're going to do. The Chiefs, prepare for the gauntlet. That's right. Prepare for the gauntlet. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to have to go up against Cleveland, Houston, Pittsburgh, Denver. All have really good defenses. And I would not be surprised if the Browns want to try to damper, the end of your season. I would not be surprised. And then not to mention you have to go up against Houston. Can't sleep on them. You have to go up against Pittsburgh on Christmas. Everyone's going to be watching that game. All my fellow junkies, you're going to be watching that game because I'm going to be watching that game. Most likely there's a good chance you might lose. But again, who knows? But I do know this. The Chiefs, they don't look the best. They sort of look like some of those Patriot, teams in the later parts of their dynasty where it seemed a little bit shaky. You don't really know if they're really going to be super competitive in the playoffs. And then guess what? Next thing you know, they're in the Super Bowl once again. But hopefully that is not the case, though. But let's go to the NFC side. Whew. NFC East. Man, what is there to say about you guys that hasn't been said already? Giants. Hit the button. Okay? Better yet, don't even hit the button. Just yank out the cord from the wall, okay? Because it's over, okay? Wrap it up, tie it up, throw it in the trash. It's over with, okay? And then not to mention, not too long ago, Brian Dable reported that, Drew Lock is in a walking boot, so that means Tommy DeVito is going to be the starting quarterback on Sunday. Whew. This is not going to be good. This team is about to get steamrolled, okay? They are about to get cooked. They are about to get baked, hibachied, grilled, fried, pan-seared with a little bit of butter and thyme, rosemary. Do the little thing when you get the spoon. You keep on scooping, 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 scooping. That's exactly what's going to happen. Keep on scooping, 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 scooping. L's. Okay. Oh, that was a great analogy. I'm gonna have to keep that in. But yeah, there's nothing really to say about the Giants. They're preparing for the draft. They're preparing for, their next quarterback who they're probably going to draft and whatnot. It'll probably be Cam Ward. I wouldn't be surprised. For the Cowboys, finish strong. The reason why I say this is because despite the ups and downs that the Cowboys have had this season, you still want to try to root for them. Not me, because I don't like the Cowboys, not one bit, but if you're a Cowboys fan, you still want to try to root for them just to finish strong, especially for players on that team that, have a lot of uncertainty. Because again, this team has a lot of uncertainty. You don't know if they're going to keep Mike McCarthy. You don't know if they're going to bring in a new head coach. You don't know if they're going to, clean out the positional coaches. Even though your season didn't end the best, guess what? You finished strong. Do I even really want to say the rest of their matchups? Yeah, we might as well. Carolina, Tampa Bay, Philly, Washington. I don't think this is going to end well. I do not think this is going to end well, folks. I just don't know. Now for the Commanders. You already most likely are going to be in the playoffs. Do I think they're going to win? No. Do I think they probably could try to win? Possibly. But hey, who knows? But, when we look at this, when they were on that hot start, there was people saying, oh man, Jaden Daniels looking, like a generational talent. He's doing his thing. Duh, 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 duh. And then next thing you know, he runs into Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and then things get a little bit cool. Things get a little bit chilled. And now they're in a situation where, although you do have a winning record, you want to try to at least end things with you making it to the playoffs just to add the cherry on top. The next games that they have to go up against are New Orleans, Philly, Atlanta, and then Dallas. New Orleans is somewhat of a dumpster fire. Everybody else up in the air because, the divisional opponents, especially Philly and Dallas. Atlanta, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they bench, Kirk Cousins and have Michael Penix play. So wouldn't be surprised with that. But all in all, you had a really great season. Build off of that momentum for next year. Address the holes on the team and figure out how you can make this team better. Now, for the Eagles, I had silenced the naysayers, especially with everything going on right now with the whole, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown situation. You want to tamp that down. And the only way that you can tamp that down is if you be dominant for the rest of the season. Because right now you have to go up against Pittsburgh, Washington, Dallas, and then the Giants. I can tell you right now the Giants, most likely they're going to rest their starters. And Lenny Pickett is going to be in. Dallas, I don't know. That might actually be a pretty good game. That might actually be a bad good game. I don't know. Washington might even be the same thing. But Pittsburgh, yeah. We want our revenge, especially from 2 years ago when y'all was doing y'all thing and A.J. Brown was pointing at people when he was basically Randy Moss 2.0 on the field. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we want our revenge. We want it. It's a little bit personal on Sunday. So all my Eagles fans, just know, if y'all don't hear from me on Sunday, just know it's nothing but love after the game, not during the game. For the NFC North, though, Lions maintain control of the divisional and conference lead. You are on a hot streak right now. You are the most dominant team in the NFC. However, you don't want to try to, get the high horse and feel like you're undefeated and no one can take you down, because guess what? It'll be that one team that nobody would expect, and then guess what? They punch you in the mouth and now you're out of the playoffs, right? Because when we look at it, you have to go up against Buffalo. That's going to be a tough matchup. Chicago, I don't think that's really going to be a tough matchup. I think they're just, licking their wounds and just reassessing how they're going to, address this team, moving forward, especially next year. San Francisco, they may try to put up a fight just because they want to try to see if they can get into the playoffs. And the Vikings, they're already in the playoffs, but they'll definitely try to, fight you tooth and nail. That's not a game where you can just rest your starters. I'm sorry. But for the Packers, clean up your self-inflicted wounds and prepare yourself for the playoffs. The last few games, the problem with the Packers is their self-inflicted wounds. The holding calls, the small, minute things. Those things add up, okay? If you keep on getting a holding call, every 2 or 3 drives, that's going to put you in a bad, in a bad position on the field. But if you clean that up and if you try to play a little bit more better football, more consistent better football, well then guess what? You won't have to worry about those things. And even now, they're still in a really good spot. So you want to try to sneak into the playoffs because right now people are sleeping on you. But guess what? I believe in you. Well, I really don't believe in you, but I believe in you. Just a little bit. Not a whole lot though, because when we look at this, you have to go up against Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, and then Chicago. Chicago, you can most likely, rest your starters. But the rest of those 3 games, oh no, you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to fight for your rights. I know all the Chiefs fans are probably saying, it's a party. Nobody cares. Vikings, prepare yourself for the playoffs, okay? Because right now, you are right under the Lions when it comes to playoff seeding and whatnot. If I'm not mistaken, I think they have the second or third seed. Don't, if I got it wrong, don't hold it to me and whatnot. But when we look at this, you have to go up against Chicago, then Seattle, Green Bay, and then Detroit. The last 3 games, I mean, that's pretty brutal just to end things, right? I mean, dang. Green Bay and then Detroit to the 2 games to end the season? Good God almighty. Whew. Man, oh man. But, if you would have told me this Vikings team would be in the position that they are right now, especially with Sam Darnold, I would have called you a liar. But, Sam Darnold has basically played himself into a new contract, most likely 30 to 40 plus million a year. And, they could probably be a big problem to other NFC teams. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings make it to the Super Bowl this year. I just would not be surprised. Hey, you never know. Vikings and Steelers, Super Bowl, who knows? Bears, reset. I understand, you guys had a lot of hype coming into the season. I understand that, the team got you this weapon and that weapon and this person and that person. But, I think it's just time to just assess where the team is and just realize, hey, we're not going anywhere. There's no point in us trying to fight to go anywhere. We might as well just want to assess what we have, on the team and figure out if we need to make any adjustments and whatnot. And if I'm the head coach, this is also important for you as well because, hey, if you win the next 4 games, you might have a little bit of leverage to say, hey, we won the last 4 games of the season. Keep me on the team. I want to stay here and I want to continue to build with Caleb Williams, right? Compared to just, getting rid of you and then, bringing in somebody else and then messing up that chemistry and whatnot. Now, for the NFC South, finish strong. If you would have told me that Carolina would be where they are right now, I would have called you a liar. And for them to, turn their season around, especially specifically for Bryce Young, I would have called you a liar. I definitely was under the impression that Bryce Young was definitely going to get traded by the trade deadline simply because, he wasn't playing well. Then he got benched and whatnot. And so, once that happens, you're probably thinking, oh, they're about to move off of him and, ride with Andy Dalton. But clearly that's not the case. And they've showed a little bit of fight and a little bit of grit. And, that's something that you can carry on into next season. So, when we look at their schedule, the remaining schedule, Dallas, Arizona, Tampa Bay, and then Atlanta. So you end the season with 2 divisional opponents. Most likely 2 of those opponents are probably going to make it into the playoffs. So, just try to fight. Maybe you could try to mess up their odds or their chances of making it into the playoffs. Who knows? Saints, prepare for the offseason. I don't want to go on this crazy soapbox, but I think it's just time that you acknowledge that you're going to go through a real rebuild. I think this experiment with Derek Carr has run its course, and I think it's time for you to go young and cheap at this point because outside of that game against the Cowboys, Derek Carr really hasn't been doing a whole lot. I'm sorry. He just hasn't. And, with his head coach getting fired and then you have the intern head coach and whatnot, most likely he's going to get fired as well. And then they're going to bring in somebody else. And it's just going to be a whole lot of change and turnover. So it's just best that you go into a different direction at this point. Now, when we look at their schedule, right, they have Washington, Green Bay, Las Vegas, and then Tampa Bay. I don't know if, if they're going to try to see if they can fight, but if I was them, maybe you could try to see if you can, win maybe 1 or 2 games to have a little bit of momentum. But at this point, just prepare. Prepare for the offseason, okay? When you have players like Demario Davis and Cameron Jordan, I think if I'm the Saints organization, I would release them. And not for anything bad, but simply because you want to put them in a position where, they could possibly compete for a title. I think it would be right for them to do so because they've done so much for this team. They've been with this team through the ups and downs, highs and lows. So what better way to help them than to just let them choose if they want to, go to a championship team or if they want to retire. Because this team needs to get young. They need to clean up their books when it comes to the cap space and whatnot. And they need to start offloading some of these big contracts instead of just doing a whole bunch of restructures and pushing money down, towards the end of the contract. And then before you know it, now you're in the negative and you're trying to figure out exactly how you're going to get into the positive so that you can try to, sign some people and then sign your draft picks and whatnot. It's a whole bunch of stuff. Just hit the reset button, please. Now, for the Buccaneers, fight for a wild card spot, okay? You can still make it into the playoffs. You're neck and neck with the Falcons. But the only way that you can separate yourself is if you keep on winning. And right now, you have to go up against the Chargers, Dallas, Carolina, and then New Orleans, right? You know that the Chargers are going to give you a problem. They are a really good defense as well as a really good offense, okay? Carolina, they still got some grit with them, okay? New Orleans, run them over, okay? Go on the ship and say, set sail for New Orleans, run them over, okay? Now for the Falcons, extend your divisional lead, okay? Because remember, there was a point in time where, there was a lot of uncertainty with Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins wasn't looking the best and that, there was a chance that, Michael Penix would come in, but, they have confirmed and basically stood by Kirk Cousins' side and will continue to give him a chance. So, but when we look at their schedule, they have the Raiders, the Giants, Washington, and then Carolina. The Giants and the Raiders, you can steamroll them simply because they're preparing for the draft. Washington, they're going to fight you tooth and nail. And on top of that, that's a little bit of a revenge game for Dan Quinn. Carolina, they have a little bit of grit with them too, so you can't count them out as well. So, there's that. Now, when we look at the NFC West, you want to try to fight, okay? And the reason why I say that is because your division is still very competitive, okay? It's not like you're the Lions or the Eagles where you just have this large margin of a lead against your other divisional rivals. It's still fairly close. So, you want to try to extend that as much as you can. You have Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, and then the Rams. That's a very tough 4-game schedule, okay? Green Bay, they're going to give you problems. Minnesota, problems. The Bears, hunting. The Rams, they're going to give you problems as well. So you have to prepare yourself because most likely you're going to be fighting, okay? Because if you give the Cardinals just a little bit of wiggle room, if you give the Rams just a little bit of wiggle room, they can come on in, take your spot, and the next thing you know, you're trying to figure out how you're going to, try to fight even a little bit harder to get where you're trying to go. Because, again, this team is young, fairly inexperienced. The ceiling for them is a little bit lower simply because, they've had a lot of turnover. They got a new head coach and whatnot. But, for them to be in the driver's seat of their offseason is great. And, to me, I feel like they have exceeded expectations. And I feel like, this team is going to be a really good team, moving forward. Now for the Cardinals, try to win the division and get a wild card spot. Now, I understand that they lost against the Seahawks and whatnot, and I understand, it puts them back in a bad position, but you still want to try to fight. You don't want to lay down and just mope and grope and whatnot. No. You want to fight, okay? You have New England, that should be a winnable game. Carolina, that should be a winnable game. And the last two games are your divisional games. The Rams and San Francisco. You have to play those games serious, because if you don't, the Rams can go over top of you. The 49ers could try to sneak their way into the wild card. Who knows, right? This Cardinals is still a really good team. They still have a lot of good pieces. They can do it. They just have to be better, okay? Kyler Murray has to be better when it comes to his throws, his play calling, and everything, okay? Because once he starts throwing interceptions, you can physically see that he's just like mentally checked out or whatever. Now, for the final team, 49ers. Yes, 49ers. Oh, 49ers, 49ers, 49ers. Oh, the faithful. Hit the reset button and offload large contracts, okay? And the reason why I say that is because your team has gotten old and expensive. You haven't really been hitting on your draft picks, especially on your first round, draft picks. So it's time for you to offload some of those contracts and to prepare yourself, possibly for the end of your Super Bowl run. I understand it was a great run. I understand that, you had multiple chances and you wasn't able to get them. Now, some of that could be blamed on certain people who will remain anonymous, but the fact of the matter is, this was a failed experiment, and now it is time for you to get young and cheap. Not to mention, you have to prepare yourself for paying Brock Purdy, which will be possibly in the ballpark of $50+ million a year. So you have to figure out what you're going to do. If it was me personally, Javon Hargrave, if he doesn't want to do restructure, gotta go. Deebo Samuel, gotta go. George Kittle, figure out what you're going to do with him. Other than, if it was me personally, maybe give him an extension, maybe. And then just figure out exactly what positions do you want to address. Now, if it was me personally, I feel like they do need to address offensive line. Now, am I saying they need to address it in the first round? No. But at some point, they do need to address offensive line because it is now bite them in the butt. Okay? Do I think, depending on how they do things in the offseason, that they could possibly make maybe one more run? Yes. But at the same time, when you look at their division, the Rams have gotten a tremendously better. Okay? The Seahawks have gotten tremendously better. And they're young. Okay? The Cardinals are the same thing as well. So you have passed the time where you could have steamrolled these teams now. Now these teams, they got some weapons with them, and now they can fight back. And so now you have to figure out exactly what can you do to make yourself stand out, not only against your divisional opponents, but against any and every opponent that you have to face come next year. If I'm Kyle Shanahan, maybe you have to figure out what you have to do with your personnel because, there was a point in time where Kyle Shanahan's play calling, you were trying to figure out, what is it? How they do this? How they do that? And it was like somewhat of a secret. But now that half of his, personnel are either head coaches, offensive coordinators, or, assistants or other teams, everybody now sort of knows a little bit of the playbook of the Kyle Shanahan offense. And now defenses have been able to catch up and to scheme against it a lot better. So I'm going to end this episode here. Oh my God, 1 hour and 3 minutes. Woo! Man, oh man. This was a loaded episode. But yeah, I'm going to end this right here. There's nothing else I need to talk about because everything else is related to the offseason. But if you guys like what you are listening, please leave a 5-star review on anywhere that you listen, the Football Junkies podcast, whether it be RSS feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. We are there. Now, for my YouTube people, like, share, subscribe, notification, a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts about my assessment with your team. Okay, was I right? Was I wrong? Indifferent? All that good stuff and more. Okay. For my TikTok people, okay, Football Junkies Pod. Okay, go on the YouTube. We have a link tree. You can click on the link tree and it'll take you directly to where you want to go and get that fix that you need for Football Junkies content. For my Instagram people, football_junkies pod. Okay, football_junkies pod. Junkies pod is not what? It is together, not spaced. Football_junkies pod. Okay. As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to another great episode of the Football Junkies podcast. Oh, I forgot. Follow us on Blue Sky as well at GM Kale. Okay, GM_Kale. Kaile. All right. Peace and love. I love you guys so much. We got Thursday night football. We'll talk about it. Maybe we won't talk about it. I don't know. But I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Peace and love. Happy holidays as well. Be safe, everyone. I'm out.